On this episode, we talk about what makes a supercar and why we don't have a Bugatti in our fleet. Stay tuned. All right. Welcome to episode 3 of XXTV. I'm Joe Moore, the CMO at Xtreme Xperience, and I'm sitting here with Cal Denice and Mitch Gummerson. Cal is a new face to the episodes. He's one of our instructors as well as an operations director. Or what would your technical title be?
Track Operations Director.
Track Operations Director. He's been with us for a long time, and of course you've met Mitch in our previous episodes. So today we're going to talk about what makes a supercar, and why we don't have a Bugatti Veyron in our fleet. One of the most common questions that we get from everybody we talk to. So with that said, we're just going to kind of kick this off and generally talk about, so we call our program the Supercar Track Experience, and Supercar means different things to different people. We refer to these as exotic cars all the time. We refer to them as supercars. There's hypercars, there's sports cars, and now more and more cars are more accessible with 700 horsepower. They don't cost $500,000 anymore, but then you do have your $2 million Bugattis and Koenigsegg's and Paganis and that level of car. But what we use is pretty much, it sits in the middle there. They're the luxurious, exclusive, fast, track-ready, exotic cars, but we'll just call them supercars for today's episode, right? So, I guess the first thing we just want to talk about is what are the criteria you think for supercars? What are the different things that we need to put into the definition of supercar?
That's a good question. I think Cal and I actually vibed on this really quick before we even started this, and it's some of these, even like the Nissan GTR, could be considered a sports car, but it has, when it came out, it had that extra edge to it. It had, the ability to hit 0 to 60 in less than 3 seconds, and just, it ate Lamborghinis and Ferraris for lunch on the track. Yeah. So I think it's that, to me, like the Nissan GTR is a supercar. I really believe that. I would say with our fleet, we picked the most popular ones. That's why I think that we haven't had any. Some people would say, why don't you have a Lotus, or, even why don't we have, Bugattis or anything like that. It's, for us, the Ferraris and the Lamborghinis, the Porsches, the Audis, they were always the most popular and most easily recognizable.
Yeah. Any criteria you think we should throw in the mix here?
Well, first, most of your supercars are sports cars. In order for it to be a supercar, it basically already checks off the box of sports cars.
So there's like a hierarchy.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And from there, there's not a just, each box gets checked off. It's kind of an overall image. And with the supercars, a lot of it is performance. Sometimes it is the price. However, like we mentioned, the GTR falls into the supercar category. So does the new Z06, and neither one of those are over $200,000 or anything.
Yeah.
But their performance is there, their image is there. They are, top of the line cars for their respective manufacturers.
I think we could throw design in the mix. You look at the McLaren. There's certain cars that turn heads that may not qualify as supercar for some reasons. Maybe it's performance, but they are head turners. Like a Lotus, for example, is what I would consider a sports car, but it has a little bit of exotic appeal because it just stands out in traffic. It really is like a.
I think that's definitely a good point to make, and the Z06 and I would say the GTR as well are kind of outliers because they're not. The price is one of the categories that we look at as well. $250,000 car, or anything that's like 180 over, that kind of deems it in the supercar level, but. If we're just going based on price, this Rolls Royce here could be, the same. Right. It could be a supercar, but it's not.
Right.
And even when you look at when the NSX first came out, there was a standard of what a supercar was back then, and the NSX came out, and it was let's redefine what it is. And a lot of cars do that, and they redefine it. And for example, the Lotus, they sit there and say, we're going to give you all the, exotic everything, but, you don't need to do 200 miles an hour because where are you going to do that on the street legally? You can't. So they give you a whole different package, but still, a very, very unique car. And that's what a lot of manufacturers do. You've got your Lamborghinis and your Ferraris that kind of set the bar, and then other manufacturers say, where can I fit in?
Yeah.
And it's like that in all different kinds of markets, not just cars, where someone sets a standard somewhere and then someone says, I'm going to redefine what you think of this product as.
Yeah. One of the other elements I think we touched on before the show was technology. So there are certain cars that, the P85D has been thrown in the conversation in different videos. You see it beating Aventadors and stuff. Of course, so acceleration-wise, that thing meets a supercar standard of acceleration, but I wouldn't call that thing a supercar. Although you'll see headlines that say the supercar beater, but...
I totally agree. I don't think I would put it in the level of supercar. I think in our day and age right now, the technology is growing exponentially, and what you're seeing is all of these cars are becoming more efficient. They have the ability to do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds or less, give or take.
Yeah, it's becoming a benchmark, essentially.
It is kind of becoming a benchmark. It's really interesting to see that. But in general, I think when you're talking supercar, there's the performance aspect and the technology aspect. Like this McLaren here, the amount of things that Ted was reading off the other day with, like almost windshield wipers for the brakes type technology.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff is definitely supercar-esque. But to me, it's this almost passion for the vehicle, this design element that you don't put into a standard production car that you would see on the street. Like, I look at a Toyota Camry, that's not going to catch my eye. I look at even a Lotus Esprit, something that would probably still be deemed a sports car, but that catches my eye. I would put that closer to the high level of it.
A lot of the technology trickles down, and so you look at things that used to be considered cutting edge technology, like the carbon fiber, or even a Tiptronic gearbox.
Yeah.
Touching on the fact that we use all automatics. I mean, Ferrari and Lamborghini don't even give you an option for a stick shift anymore. But now I can go out and get a Ford or Toyota, anything just about, and it's comes with a Tiptronic gearbox. Those things, as the technology trickles down and it becomes more spread out, now they've got to step the bar up even more, and that's where the dual clutch stuff has stepped in, and who knows what's coming next after it. But it's generally stuff that you see 20 years ago is the stuff that you see in an everyday car now. So the stuff that we're seeing in these cars right here, in 15, 20 years will probably be available on a Civic in some sort of way.
Right.
So to lead into the kind of the next category, hypercar. So this McLaren sitting behind us starts at about $185,000, I think. It has a full carbon fiber tub, which is basically race car technology that then found its way into like the hypercar territory. Now it's available in a relatively affordable supercar, but the hypercars take things to the next level. I mean, we're talking full carbon fiber construction, really exotic metals, race car technology essentially that's making it to the production line, new hybrid technologies which are sort of coming from F1, right? I mean, the different forms of hybrid.
They take a lot of that.
GTLM cars.
They take a lot of the technology from their prototype cars. Look at the Porsche 919 hybrid that they've got out there racing, and a lot of that technology gets then put into the street version of the 918, and it's their first step into production. And as production numbers go up, price drops, as with everything. And so when it's a one-off custom piece and it's on their race car, it's extremely expensive. They're testing it, they're figuring it out, and then when they finally get it, where they see it can fit into a street car, they put it there, and once that's proven, then it gets further and further down the chain.
So real quick, let me ask you this. So do you think then, just like we're talking about the McLaren carbon fiber tubs made it into this level, do you think we'll see like a 918 hybrid style system make its way into a 911 one day? Or
it'll be interesting to see, but I see it happening. I mean, look at the NSX with its hybrid system. More and more cars are going to go that way, especially with the emissions and stuff, the way that they're going, as well as there's no reason not to. As you see with the Tesla, as you mentioned, it's so fast off the line. It's not even what we would consider a supercar or even near a hypercar. but yet it's able to keep up with them. So there's no reason not to make it lighter and more efficient. So it's just it should be probably the natural progression.
I think the kind of common the idea thought that's going on here is the fact that supercars and hypercars, it's pushing that level. That's what it's really doing, and I think that's what kind of defines them. Is it's almost the first time you've ever seen X, this type of transmission, this type of material, this type of fabric or anything. And what you see is over the years of testing, like with DTM cars and Racing Le Mans with the 919, it gets built, it gets tested, the money, it's there, then they decide to filter it into a production car, and it continues to go down the line. So it's really the common thread between it all is just pushing the boundaries of what is possible in a car. Mm-hmm. And I think the nomenclature of hypercar is kind of the next thing for our generation. That was never really a big thing 20 years ago, was calling cars hypercars. It was always just supercar was the level.
Right.
But I would think with like the Koenigsegg 1-to-1, the Bugatti Veyron, the Porsche 918 and LaFerrari and those, the Holy Trinity of cars, those do push that extra level. They go that extra distance.
Yeah.
Another thing that if you want to see where car technology is going, I would suggest look at aircraft technology, because they are the lightest and everything. In order to achieve maximum payloads and stuff like that, they got to make it lighter. A lot of the stuff that we see now, even the heads-up displays that are in cars, I mean, a lot of it's been essentially stolen from the aviation industry. Mm-hmm. And with Formula One, with as much as aerodynamics play a factor, it's basically an airplane that is flying on the ground. And so if we really, really want to go that far into the future, that's where it's going to be, is borrowing stuff more and more from aviation, because it's very important.
Would you say that Formula One is the most progressive technology in racing? I mean, nowadays there's so many different racing series that are all pushing limits, but I do feel like F1's sort of, at least from an aero perspective, right? It's got to be.
They are right up there. I mean, even IndyCar is going so much with aerodynamics. But then, I really think that where you get a lot of the breakthroughs in technology, I don't know if as much is coming from Formula One anymore, as it is from other types of prototypes. Even now, the Formula E. Yeah. And Formula E is setting all kinds of new standards and stuff. And it's just interesting to see. I wouldn't say it's focused as much in Formula One as it was years and years ago.
So you came from a racing background, and I think one thing that we've already I'm just identifying as a common thread here is racing bred technology finding its way into these cars, because eventually, as you mentioned, dual clutch transmissions, you can get into the Golf GTI now. That was a racing technology, found its way into supercars and sports cars, then it's trickled down into more consumer-friendly cars. And I think that could be said for a lot of different technologies, but I think one thing we can agree on is that these cars, like a McLaren or a Ferrari 458, have more racing technology in them than any car in history, really. Like, you've got the transmissions, you've got the suspensions, the computer technology that's in them, even the tire technology. I mean, all of this is really trickled down from race cars.
And none of it is actually, in production cars, none of it's limited by the restrictions of the race category they're in. So many of them have weight regulations, it has to be certain transmissions and tires and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
One thing that both of you guys have just touched on is the tires. And being a race car driver and someone who's been around racing my whole life, that really is a key factor right there. And one of the big things that every driver will tell you is, your car can only do so much, but your tires really, that's where everything is. That's where the car contacts the road, and if your tires aren't good, you've got nothing. I can take an SUV and go around a track faster than a Formula One car if the car is just on absolute no grip left tires.
Right.
And that's where, when you talk about supercars and stuff like that, and even hypercars, tires is a huge factor in it, and the technology that goes into those and the speeds that they can withstand. A lot of cars, one of the limiting factors for them is, so much centrifugal force pulling on that tire look at how much the tire expands and stuff like that. Look at drag racing, for example. When you watch those top fuel cars go and the tire just expands because of how much force is going there. That's really where you get a lot of the stuff from these cars and being able to utilize the tire the best. And that's something where not everybody realizes when you look at the comparisons between the Ferrari and the Porsche and the McLaren. When they did their stuff, one of the big things that they all focused on was tires, and they all had to agree on what tire was going to be used. How can we make this as even as possible?
So actually, speaking of tires, so on a supercar, you work in the operations department. You work a lot with procuring our tires and making sure we're ready for the track and stuff. But so on average, what is a set of tires or an individual tire like on a Huracan or something?
Oh, it ranges. I mean, even with our, let's use the Porsche for example. It came with some Pilot Sport Cup 2s on it. Sport Cup 2s are an amazing tire. It's going to give you just about the most grip you can get on a street tire. But that tire is a couple $100 more expensive than the next tire down, which is a Super Sport, which a lot of times we use. And the grip level is just a little less, but to get that extra little bit costs that much more money. I mean,
so you're talking like $500 a tire
for a full set. It's several $100 difference from the Super Sports to the Cup 2s, and overall it's still, you're going to spend close to $2,000 for a set of tires, and then mounting and balancing. These aren't something that you normally take to just a Walmart Supercenter at their tire place.
So for people watching this, who might have just their daily driver might be something like a Toyota or a minivan or an SUV, where a set of tires might cost a few $100, maybe $100 a tire, something like that. We're talking about $300, $400, $500 per tire.
Yeah, and even north of that sometimes. $500, $600 per tire. And if you go into a racing tire or what's considered like a DOT slick, you can get really, really expensive tires and spend as much as $4,000 to get a set of tires mounted and balanced.
Yeah.
So I don't want to keep us on some people watching this are like, geez Louise, like snooze fest tires. I mean, it's something that we talk about and it's like we understand and appreciate. And they're looking at this pretty red McLaren going, that's what makes a supercar. But ultimately, I mean, really, just the tires as an example is just one tiny facet of supercar technology off the factory line that's going to give you that level of performance. So let's talk a little bit more about the cars that are in our fleet and why they're in our fleet, why we chose some of these cars. We kind of started touching on this in our last episode. We were at the car show, you, Rich, and I, and we were talking about what was available at the car show, what maybe some things we saw there that might be something we want to add to the fleet or what fits into the fleet. But our fleet, like we said, all kind of meets that supercar standard, right? We don't have hypercars in our fleet. As I mentioned to kick the show off, probably the most common question we get when you tell somebody what we do for a living is, we have this Xperience. You can drive exotic cars on a racetrack. We've got Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and then they'll say, "Do you have a Bugatti?" And from our perspective, the first, it's like, come on, are you kidding me? Because
it's the number one question to be asked.
Yeah.
Even at the Xperience, it's not even if you're telling them about it. It's at the Xperience too.
Yeah.
It's
where's the P1?
Yeah.
Where's the Zonda?
Oh man, no one's asked, do we have a race car? I think that's even something, we'll talk about that in another episode, but even getting something like that would be more affordable than getting a Bugatti.
Yeah, so let's talk numbers real quick. So a MSRP on a Bugatti Veyron was like $2.2 million. You could probably find them now for 1.7 to 2 million.
Depends the model, Sport Vitesse.
There's the Grand Vitesse.
Yeah, exactly.
So we just saw the Grand Vitesse, I think, at the car show. It was a blue carbon fiber.
Yeah.
Ridiculous
baby
car.
Blue and
that one's over $2 million. So I was just looking at some numbers on our website, and to drive an exotic car on a racetrack at our Xperience, like a Lamborghini Huracan or this McLaren, $399 for 3 laps is the starting price. So that's 0.1% of the price of a car. So I was just looking at MSRP, our Xperience value versus the MSRP of the vehicle.
Right.
It ranges from anywhere from 0.1 to 0.17% of the MSRP. If you take that same equation and apply it to a Bugatti, you're looking at $2,800 $2,800 for 3 laps. We were talking about tires. I just found an article that said that a tire change on a Bugatti, because they're not off the shelf tires, is over $30,000. An oil change is $21,000. We service our cars frequently. I mean, can you imagine how many times we'd have to change oil in a car?
Well, let's not just even talk about that, but we had an Aventador at an event not too long ago, and we're charging almost $500, and that was still a little more rich for certain people's blood than others. I mean, the Aventador is an amazing car.
Yeah.
It really is. But when you apply the same sort of logic to it of, what our average cost is, 0.1%, it is right around what we charge.
Yeah.
Or what we have to maintain the car.
The other side of it, looking at it from the driver's standpoint, a Bugatti is going to be best, on that long straightaway.
A mile, 2 mile long straightaway.
Go to NOLA, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Volkswagen's test track, the 8 mile long straight.
Yeah, but it's, for the most part, our cars really perform well through those turns. You drive an Italia and the thing just feels like a giant go-kart.
Yeah.
And even the Aventador, when we had it, you could feel it was a heavier car, it was a bigger car, longer wheelbase, things like that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as nimble. And so, you'd be really upset if you're in a Bugatti and you're getting dusted by, somebody in an Italia, and you're like, but this car, is supposed to beat this car. Well, down the straightaway, you're going to catch them, you're going to pass them. But, as a driver, it really comes down to with on a road course, and not, we're not talking the Nürburgring or anything with super long straightaways, but the tracks that we visit, it comes down, you want a more nimble car. That's why, most of our instructors love the Porsche GT3 with how much grip it has. Yeah, it's not going to be as fast as the Huracan down the straightaway, but we still love it because it just has so much grip. I want my face being torn side to side, not just my eyeballs sucked to the back of my head.
So I think that's also a good point to make when you think of, a Ferrari lapping a Bugatti. The Bugatti wasn't made for that. It was a science project, is what it really was. Jumping into, being able to be the fastest car on the road, period.
Yeah.
At top speed.
Yeah.
And, going onto a race course, that's not what it was built for. It wasn't built for motorsports by any means. Ferraris are built for motorsports. This McLaren's built for motorsports. The Lamborghinis, I think, they do Blancpain Trofeo Series, the Super Trofeo Series, and they're built for motorsports as well. But I would almost classify them myself. I would put the Lamborghinis into like the Grand Tour category of supercars. They're amazing, but they're meant to be, kind of like long road going, steady at 150, 160 miles an hour type car.
I love the Huracan on the track though.
The Huracan is, again, it's totally different breed. I think it's amazing on the track too.
The performance you get on the track comes back to what we started with, sports car versus a supercar versus a hypercar. And when you look at all of it, there is kind of a certain earmark that it's got to hit before you can classify it from a sports car to a supercar, and from that supercar to a hypercar. And yes, you can get the Jaguar that just came out with its $3 million or however much it costs, and still not quite a hypercar. It's really fast, it's limited production, it's super expensive, but it's not where a P1 is, it's not where the 918 is. And when you go and you look at an Ariel Atom with the V8 in it, now that's one of the gray areas. Is that a supercar? It's got the speed, it's got the the look and everything, but some people classify that more as the track car, and that is another entire category.
I would put it under track car as well, even with like the Mono BAC. That's to me as well, track car, as really awesome as that car is.
Track day toy, essentially.
Track day toy, KTM Crossbow, those sorts of cars.
Yeah.
I think when you're talking supercar, there has to be like a line item in the build sheet that says just put the passion and a little bit of like flamboyance into it. Make it, you put supercar in the category, you put supercar on the name of it because you just want it to be something that catches someone's eye. I think that's what it really comes down to. It has all the performance and technology, but it's built to catch eyes and turn heads.
When you see one, you know it. When you see one,
Exactly.
that's
That's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, that is one of the best ways
It's
to put it.
it's the X factor. You see, it's like art.
Yeah.
You know, if someone has to ask, if you have to ask.
Yeah, you don't know.
Yeah. So yeah, if that's a great point. It's the X factor.
Yeah.
It's got that little extra.
I guess clearly, I think we're going to probably start some conversation now. We'd love to see your comments about maybe we missed something. I mean, we could really talk about this all day long. I think we've identified. But what are your, check boxes for Supercar? What do you require for something to be a Supercar? What are some cars that you think should be in our Supercar fleet that might be accessible, other than a Bugatti? One thing we did talk about.
For GTS.
So when people ask if we have a Bugatti,
Love that.
my answer is always, well, we could get one if you're willing to pay for it. So you tell us if you're willing to come out and drop $3,000-$4,000 on a track experience in a Bugatti or a P1 or a LaFerrari or something like that. Let us know. We did talk about starting a Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah.
So hear us out. Check this out. I'm gonna look at this camera for this one. But what would you guys do if we put up a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe and you could actually buy ownership in a hypercar? Let's just say it's the P1. Or Mitch was saying the holy. Let's go for the holy trinity. Of
I say the
hypercars.
holy trinity.
If we created a GoFundMe or Kickstarter campaign
3.5 million holy trinity
to purchase a 918 Porsche 918, a McLaren P1, and a Ferrari LaFerrari, we would be the only place in the world essentially you could come out and drive with these cars. So, what do you think about? Would you buy ownership? You could literally buy a stake in a supercar. And you, with that stake that you purchase, you'd be able to come drive it on a racetrack whenever you want. The LaFerrari is going to be sitting track prepped, ready for you to go. We'll have a custom racing suit for you. Certain different levels of bidding or donations will get you different levels of accoutrements to go with your experience. But
there would be a bunch that would go into it. Gift packages sent out to those who invested over a certain amount, and stuff like that. We would do it.
And a minimum amount would get you a driving experience in it.
Right.
And you could own a portion of it, and then the rest, tiers would be. Now you get one at every track across the country. Now we've got one in New Orleans. You can drive whenever you want. But anyway, let us know if you're interested in that, because we could seriously start this and be one of the first people ever to kick off a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter account to own a stake in an actual hypercar. I'm kind of excited about the idea, but we'll let us know what you think about that. While we're talking about your feedback, I just want to touch on a couple things. We got some comments already on our last couple of episodes. People inquiring about the new R8, because we just covered that in actually that'll be dropping in our next episode from the car show. But so they're a little ahead of the game on that. So the new R8, I would anticipate that'll be in our fleet eventually. We don't have it slated for our schedule right now, but I think that car, just seeing it in front of us at the car show, was kind of like, wow. We had phased the R8 out because we've just been running for a few years and we wanted to make room for something like this. But I think that I wouldn't say it's a no. We'll definitely.
Definitely not. I think the new model's got pretty good styling cues, especially with the rear end, the way they redid that.
Yeah.
Like the addition of the wing, it's no longer the little lip that pops up.
I'm interested to see if it's going to be more Huracan-esque than Gallardo.
Yeah, I mean, all the reviews I've read say it's basically built on the Huracan, and it's just a skin, Audi skin car. Another couple of cars we want to touch on. We always get questions about the Viper. I would love to get a Viper on a track. However, it is it's a handful. You've seen the reviews, but it is a manual. So in our fleet, we currently don't offer any full stick shift manual cars. They have paddle shifting transmissions because, as Cal mentioned, you actually can't buy a stick shifted manual supercar anymore, except for maybe like the Viper and the Corvette, and you can get a.
The GT4 has it, and the
GT4,
and the GT3 is going to get it, and the GT4 is going to get the EK.
So
probably going to swap over tech,
a handful of supercars have manuals, but we don't want to give people manual lessons on a track, and we want you to come out and actually enjoy your experience on a racetrack and not have to worry about heel toe downshifting and stuff like that. But the Viper would be an awesome addition. So here, Dodge, if you're watching, we'd love for you to make a PDK, or not PDK, but a dual clutch version of that car, and we'll get one out on the track. Another couple of cars people have asked about is the BMW i8.
Mm-hmm.
That I would put in the sports car category, but it has supercar styling, right?
It does.
I mean, I think it'd be fun to add to our program, but probably not as fun as something like this.
Yeah.
If we were going to go BMW, I think we'd have to go with the new M4 GTS.
Very much
Or
so.
M4 GT3. Is that what it is?
The M4 GT. No, it's the GTS, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the M4 GTS. I think we talked about it at the auto show, but it was 134 base.
Yeah.
I mean, it's at the GTR level.
Yeah. Would you guys want to see a BMW in our fleet? Let us know in the comments. I would love to get a BMW on the track.
I think it's a hyped up new car. The styling is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really awesome. I would totally put that in the fleet, hands down. I think people would love it.
Yeah.
But let us know.
Yeah. So is there anything else you guys want to touch on before we wrap this up, as far as what what constitutes supercars, or
I mean, one of the other things, and I get asked a lot in the car when I'm either driving with somebody or instructing them, I get asked a lot of times, what's my favorite car, or things like that. And they want my opinion and stuff, and I think it would be really cool, and I'm kind of throwing this on the spot to Joe, but would you, be interested in trying to get some of our customers review on the cars? Because I can tell them what it's like from someone who's raced my entire life just about.
Yeah.
Oh, I felt this, I felt that, when I'm doing this, it's doing that. But everybody has kind of a different opinion. It's it's like tasting wine or something. Mm-hmm. But it would be really interesting to me. I always want to know what they are experiencing, because I understand what it feels like when the car is a little bit of an understeer or something into the turn. But they just see it from a completely different perspective. Yeah. And I've always and other instructors, we've talked about it. What gravitates people to the Lamborghini when all of us go, wow, man, the front end just doesn't have enough grip, and they're sitting there at half the speed going, this thing is amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to be interesting.
I kind of feel like this could be an episode down the road where I've always thought it'd be interesting to educate customers. It's like educating on how to taste wine, but educating people on what to actually feel for. Feeling the brake feel. What does the brake feel like when you're at threshold on it? Is it like in the Lamborghini, you feel the squish before it bites? I mean, feeling the understeer, feeling what the steering feel feels like, feeling the balance transfer from front to back, like the rotation, like actually trying to train people
drive
on.
car is just always going to slip out on you.
Yeah.
It's like that's very, very rare unless you're doing something that you're not supposed to.
Yeah, you get that all the time when people are booking the Ferrari on the phone or something. They're concerned about the Ferrari being rear-wheel drive, but unless you're hammering it down in the middle of an apex and locking your wheel up, the thing's not going to go anywhere. So.
Unless you downshift and lock out and throw it through the turn, it's not going to do that.
Yeah.
You gotta know how to do that to get it to do it too.
Yeah.
The traction control systems in the cars these days are just so advanced that even in the sport mode when it's semi-on,
that's a topic for another show too. Let's talk about the modes, rear wheel versus all-wheel drive. I think that'd be really good to get your input and maybe some other instructors on feeling different cars.
Next time on XXTV.
Yeah, for sure. So stay tuned for that. I think we're gonna lock that in. Trying to think what else we need to talk about here, but I'm looking at our show notes over here. But I think that's about it. We've probably taken too much of your time already. So with all of that, leave us comments on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you're watching this. Tell us what you think constitutes a supercar. What did we miss? What are those X factors that we may not have touched on? And what are some of your dream cars you'd like to get on a racetrack, within reason or not within reason? The sky's the limit with Xtreme Experience. So leave us your feedback. We love to see the comments. We've already gotten a few comments. So shout out to Daniel Ferris. He left us a couple comments already. So anyway, we'll see you in the next episode of XXTV. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat. Again, we were Snapchatting behind the scenes here before we got started today. So be sure to follow along and take a glimpse under the hood of Xtreme Experience. Thanks for watching.